the weekend, chance took me back to the London-Essex borders, and I managed to revisit one of the earliest castles I ever visited as a child. Even a lot of people in Essex don't know it exists, but this is Hadleigh Castle. It stands on a soft London clay escarpment overlooking the very busy Thames estuary, looking out towards Kent. It's a early to middle medieval castle. Dates from originally the shall we say reign of King John approximately, but I'll give you more details in a minute. Survived through to about the 15th century, but was a building clearly plagued by its underlying geology, and you're going to learn a bit more about that in a second. Now in the hands of English heritage, Hadleigh Castle has passed through many hands. Originally built by Hugh De Burgh, the first Earl of Kent, around about 1215-ish, say, reign of King John. He later lost it in 1239. It passed into royal hands, and it was actually developed by various King Edwards, King Edward I, King Edward II, King Edward III. By the end of the 19th century, it passed into the hands of, would you believe it, General Booth and the Salvation Army, with the Salvation Army setting up the adjacent farm next door as a refuge for fallen women. And indeed, the sign was still up in the 1960s when my father drove past. He said, "Salvation Army farm for fallen women? What are they doing in there? Growing them?" Anyway, these days the Salvation Army farm is now run as a special site for youngsters with special needs, and the castle itself is open to the public and can be visited under the care of English Heritage. While the castle has suffered much from geology and also from stone robbing, the most prominent remains are the southeast tower, which you see here. You may also notice that these photographs have been taken at different times, so you're going to see snow, you're going to see dry grass, you're going to see all sorts of things. I've been coming here for many years. This is the prominent southeast tower. According to local tradition, it was used as a lookout by revenue men during the 18th century to prevent local smuggling. From up there you've got a good view down off the River Thames, and you could see the comings and goings and see who was smuggling in what and where. Another view of the southeast tower. Looks like night. In fact, it was actually taken in a thick fog, and I then solarised it in Photoshop. Looking at the first of the English Heritage site plans, we can see a coloured map here. You can see the outer walls coloured in sort of cerise pinky colours and reds are generally attributed to Hubert De Burgh, who was the original founder of the castle. It's believed that he had another site at Rayleigh, which is about 10 miles away, which is a motte and bailey, but he chose to develop here at Hadleigh instead. It's handy for the river. It's believed there was a dock at the base, and river transport could bring up food and things and transport people to the castle via a dock. So he's responsible for the red, pinky coloured walls. Edward II is responsible for the development of some of the interior buildings, which are coloured in yellow. And then finally you have the major building work attributed to Edward III. He built the gatehouse at the bottom, where you see the "you are here" dot. That includes a barbican with a drawbridge pit, what's known as the High Tower or Great Tower, not much of it left. And then over towards the top left hand you've got the southeast and northeast towers, which we will see in a second. The hatch material showing top right is of course the material that has collapsed and slid down the cliff, and you won't see a lot of that because it's all covered in undergrowth. A more recent English heritage plan available on site presents the same information but in a sort of three-dimensional form. Again, the same colours have been followed. The "You Are Here" board is now roughly in the area of the Edward II domestic alterations. The letter E at the bottom is a very unusual postern gate, which we will be looking at in detail later. The blue gatehouse F is where the drawbridge pit is. I have attempted to photograph it, but it is much filled with vegetation at the moment. And then stretching away, you've got more of the pinky, reddy coloured walls built by the original Hugh De Burgh. And then top left at I and J, you've got respectively the northeast and southeast towers. On my weekend visit, English Heritage have put in this very, very useful bird's eye view. So you're now seeing the two previous plans, but now as a representation of what it should have looked like. Again, you've got the "You Are Here" next to the tower, which has the strange postern in it. You've got this great tower, or tall tower, closest to you. And then you've got the Barbican Gate, which contains the drawbridge pit. Top right, and looking out over the edge of the escarpment and down towards the floodplain of the Thames, you have the Great Hall, but that's the area that suffered earliest from slippage from the underlying London clay, which is very soft material. So the entire edge facing the Thames has effectively dropped away over very many years. Now, the recent installation at the site is this engraving of 1738, copied by the brothers Samuel and Nathaniel Buck. I previously showed one of their engravings at Creek Abbey, which they also sketched. They went round the Britain illustrating many of these buildings, and as you can see, they saw a lot more than we see today. The Great Tower on the right is still partly standing. The northeast tower, which only slipped in the 1950s, is visible to the left, and in the centre is the southeast tower, which we will be seeing more of later. Another English Heritage information board here. The rise and slide of Hadleigh Castle explains some of the problems caused by the shifting London clay. In fact, within 35 years of major castle building taking place, the building was already described as badly built and decayed. This is the view as you walk towards the castle from the town. The Salvation Army farm is behind us. There's a bit of retaining wall here. Part of the Great Tower is visible over there, and the railing on that side leads off towards the postern gate. Here we are inside the castle. This is the first of my movie footage. You can see ahead of us the slumped remains of the northeast tower, which only collapsed in the 1950s. That is the southeast tower, which we will see more of in a moment. It has a triple garderobe chute just visible at the base of the wall on the right. That's the view out across the Thames. In the distance, that is Kent and the low hills of the North Downs. Thames estuary, that is Canvey Island, which is an area that was badly flooded in 1953 during the 53 floods. Panning round to the western end of the castle, the postern gate is just visible there, and we have sunset over the oil refineries and gas terminals and all sorts of things of Canvey Island. Here we've got the remains of the Great Tower. Well, there's not much of it. In front of us here would have been the kitchen area, and that's the base of the Great Tower. Kitchen's there. Coming down here we have the gatehouse. That's my dog, Teddy the dog, and he's actually on the railings of the gatehouse. That's where the entrance would have been, and that's the Barbican Gate, and there's a drawbridge pit in there. This is the drawbridge pit beyond those railings where my dog was. The pit is about 12 to 14 feet deep. You can't see it at the moment, it's heavily overgrown. The pivoting point for the drawbridge is somewhere to the right on that stonework, and the base of the drawbridge would drop into the pit. The rest of it would come up. It's just like a seesaw. If anyone broke through the drawbridge, they would be immediately faced by the obstacle of the pit and they would drop into it. Now, if you're in any doubt that this was a gatehouse, I'm standing next to the only remains of the portcullis. The wall stretches away from the gateway towards the great tower, which is over there, silhouetted against the sunset. And there's a still close-up of the portcullis slot itself. Unusually, this one is half rounded. Most of the other ones I've seen are normally square section. Half round, and the portcullis will drop down here. The drawbridge pit and drawbridge is off to my right. Returning to the snow of some 11 or 12 years ago, and yeah, believe it or not, that black and brown terrier you can see there is the same one you just saw tied up to the railings. He's now 12 years older. So that's the surviving south side of Hadleigh Castle, but bear in mind an entire wall and plus the great hall, etc., everything to the right of where we are has slipped down the hill. In amongst those, that foliage, the undergrowth there's large pieces of jumbled masonry, stuff that wasn't robbed or taken away for reuse elsewhere. You can also see the view out towards the sea. That's the North Sea out there, and the opening out of the Thames estuary. Returning to the October 2023 footage, once again, there's my dog. There's my daughter Caroline. The Great Tower is over there. The Barbican and drawbridge pit is over there. They've got the north wall, such as is left over there, stretching out to there's a valley. Courting couple, we'll ignore them and shoot over them. Oh yeah, lost them. There's the northeast tower. That only started to seriously collapse in the 1950s. And over here, the southeast tower, still standing, but there's some very big cracks. And at the base there, you can see a triple garderobe. There was rather more left when Constable came and sketched the castle early in the 19th century and painted it about 10 years later. Sadly, by that time his wife had just died, and he painted this rather sombre view of Hadleigh Castle, which is meant to represent Constable's depression about the death of his wife. You'll notice that the two towers seem to be rather closer together here than they are in reality. That could be because Constable found rather more of the edge of the cliff was left, and he could stand further to his right here, or simply that he moved the two towers for purposes of composition. Returning to the 2023 movie footage, that's the southeast tower, the best upstanding piece. We're looking into the hole torn by the disappearance of the south wall, and again you can just see three garderobe slots, and you're beginning to see the cracks on the interior which show that the tower itself is shifting. Quick outside view. I'm standing next to the collapsed northeast tower. I'm looking across the eastern wall, which contains what could be a small sally port, very narrow path through the wall, and stretching away ahead of us is the southeast tower, and you can see part of the east wall actually joined the tower and is facing this direction. It's another of the snow shots. We're now standing facing the interior of the southeast tower. You can just see the remains of the wall that went off to the left, and where the wall adjoined to the right on the south side of the tower, it's been ripped away. Summertime, same view, but just a little bit closer. Again, you can just see traces of cracking inside. Of course, the south wall was ripped away with the collapse of the London clay underneath. Of course, opportunist farmers and builders using the site as a quarry to stone rob didn't help matters. Not the easiest spot to stand, as I'm now downslope and on the south side of the castle. You can see traces of decorative banding at 2 points. That's flint, napped flint put in as flush work, and the 3 apertures views bottom left are the 3 garderobes, the first serving the ground floor, the second the middle floor, and the third the top floor. A triple toilet chute. Here we see the perils of building on London clay foundations. This is the interior of the southeast tower. There are 2 extensive cracks running almost up to the top of the tower, and my estimate is that the tower has between 50 and 100 years to survive. Unfortunately, there's not a lot they can do about it. It's built on soft London clay. Standing in the prominent southeast tower and looking upwards, we can see that the interior plan is sort of a hexagonal. There's traces of 2 chimney slots, top and to the right. There's also what appears to be some kind of window aperture to the right, which has sort of brick or tiled lining to it. Back on the 2023 video, we're now effectively inside the southeast tower. The 3rd garderobe, 3rd toilet chute, is slightly visible at the top as a chimney, and where the camera is pointing at the moment is where seat number 1 of the toilet would have been. Seat number 2 would have been somewhere in the middle, and then seat number 3 was above us, and you can just see a chimney type thing next to the window. That's where the poo would have come down. So quite palatial accommodation inside, and with a toilet in each of the 3 levels. So here we are at the base of the southeast tower. Those are the 3 garderobe chutes. Looking up, you see the first of 2 decorative bands. That is napped flint set into mortar. There's another one much higher up, and I once had a debate with a gentleman about whether this was a whitewashed tower or whether it was left plain. I said it's left plain. He said why? If it was going to be whitewashed, they wouldn't have bothered putting that napped flint decorative banding around it. So my view is that it was never whitewashed. It was intended to be on show. Allegedly, the word garderobe comes from the practice of hanging robes, cloaks, furs, etc. in the room where the toilet was. It's said that the smell of the ammonia coming up the chute, plus the general draft, etc., discouraged moths and other pests from laying their eggs in your clothing. So you literally guarded the robes. You pays your money and takes your choice on that one. Maybe it's true. And if it's not entirely true, at least it's a good story to tell the tourists. Quick view of the northeast tower. Not a lot you can say about it. It's heavily slumped and leaning in this direction, and apparently started falling down in the 1950s, with more of it falling in the 1960s. According to an on-site board, there was even slippage here, earth slippage, as recently as 2002. So this is the remains of the northeast tower, and you can tell the southeast tower is going to go the same way. Now this is living proof you can visit a site dozens of times and still see something new every time. I was aware of this sally port. The entrance is to the left, narrow entrance into a dogleg passageway, which then exits to the right. But while looking at the photographs here this evening, I noticed further details that I'd missed even while I was standing there. So this is a dogleg passageway, when the intention of the dogleg is to prevent a battering ram from being used first on the outside door, which is to the left, and it can't go around the bend to be used on the inside door. But we'll look at this in detail in a second picture which I've annotated. Oh, the wonders of Photoshop. I had a quick go at this one tonight. I've put in the blue door, which is the original exterior door or gate to this little postern passageway, and the yellow is the interior door. So you have a 90-degree dogleg passageway, and the idea or intention is that if the front, the blue gate, is smashed in with a battering ram, the battering ram then cannot be turned around the passageway to get at the yellow inner door. But while looking at the photograph tonight, I noticed there's a groove a portcullis groove where the red circle is. If you look in there, it's the same half round that we saw at the main gate, so it's obviously the style they were using at the time. So there's a portcullis here, exterior door in blue to the left, interior door yellow to the right. And if you want to see one of these sally ports or posterns in use, watch the second Lord of the Rings film, the Two Towers, and Aragorn and Gimli nip out of a very similar postern or sally port and then leap into the attacking orcs. And these little passageways allow troops to get out quickly, attack the attackers, and then retreat back inside. And you have an almost airlock system of a blue door, a yellow door, and a sliding portcullis as an extra belt and braces defence. An interesting and unusual detail. So this has been a very personal tour of a castle I've been to many times. So I'm just going to leave you now with the sunset view over the Thames estuary and beautiful Canvey Island. So it was a Salvation Army farm for fallen women. And as my dad drove past, he said, "What are you doing, growing them?"
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. What are you doing, growing them? We're considering fish and chips. I used to come up here with my late son, her brother, and we used to picnic up here sometimes. Nice. This has been a Warspite production. If you've enjoyed this, please leave a thumbs up. If you've really enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next time. This is Warspite out, and have a very good day.